everyone, it's Tina Vesely. I am here with you today to talk about the full lunar eclipse that's coming up in this May 5th, 2023. Now, the full lunar eclipse that's happening, guess what? It's going to be happening for some of us on the East Coast and during the day. It starts in the morning, approximately 11:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It hits the peak around 1:22 p.m. and it should be wrapping itself up probably around 3:31 p.m. So I thought it was like kind of cool because it was like, wow, I'm so used to seeing a lunar eclipse at night. Maybe I didn't pay attention some other years, but I thought it was interesting. But for some of you throughout the world, you might see that it's happening on May 6th. But for those of you in the United States, it is on the 5th. It just depends, adjust your standard time, uh, by that. But what had happened last week on the 20th was a solar eclipse. And that solar eclipse that was only seen really, in Europe and like that, that time was, and it still affects us. It doesn't matter if it happened where it was seen in another part of the world, that energy still affects us. And what that was about was basically about the past, about patterns that have been like coming up and maybe a bit stagnant or like that, that have been standing out that we had to really deal with. The other part of it was it was a time to dig into um, our psyche, go deeper on deeper levels, and in some cases drudge up some stuff that we didn't know we were suppressing. So it could have been a real emotional time, a time of feelings, expressing your feelings. The thing is, it's not over. So even though that eclipse had happened and now we're having the lunar eclipse, the effects of both of these eclipses is going to be carried on for about 6 months until the next eclipse, which is in about the sign of Libra, which is around September, October time period. But I believe that eclipse is in October. Excuse me. With this lunar eclipse, I do want to note, just so you know, I will be looking at some notes. Prior to the solar eclipse, I had done some channeling as to what was coming up for this time of year. And then when I was channeling that, probably at the beginning of April, I then looked at the calendar and I noticed that it was eclipse season coming. And I'm like, oh, no wonder why these big changes, these emotional time that's coming. I was trying to figure it out because for a lot of you, you probably noticed how March was. And last year, when I was checking on things and tuning into it last year, I knew April was going to be a big time. But I just didn't take time to check out why. Well, at the beginning of the month, I realized why, and it's because it's eclipse season, and the moon and the sun has a lot to do with what goes on in our life. Some people believe it, some people don't. I like astrology and I like the planets and I like learning about things. I am not an astrologer, but I do follow a couple cool ones, on one in particular. But anyway, between the information I received and when I looked at my notes, and then I started to uh, listen to my astrologer to see how does it equate, it came up so similar, and I was like, wow, and this is a heavy time period. This is a time of self discovery. This is a time of learning how to truly value ourselves. Not value us, not valuing ourselves by other people's standards or societal standards, the regular mundane standards, but really taking time to sit back and to do an overview of our achievements and really getting to know who we are. This is a time where you're going to feel a big push. So it's like, you know, having that iron's ready. It's been in the fire and it's ready to strike. So if you think of a blacksmith who had to wait till that was just at the right heat and then he hit it to form it, that's the time you have that hammer in your hand and you're ready to form that steel. I like the point of it thinking of that steel because I'd rather be forming steel than clay because steel's a bit harder. So that means that whatever we're working on and creating on now is long lasting, and it's really a big movement and change. This is a time of wanting more or feeling of wanting more. In some cases, people are going to, think that it's just about having or wanting more money. It's not just about the money issue, or that fast cash, that windfall, like, oh, let me go play Powerball because maybe I'll win $1 billion. This is a bit more than that, and a lot more valuable. So it's, in some cases, it's about the inner work that we're doing, and self-identification. We're not. This is a time not to attach to our worldly power. We're beyond that. So some of us may think of, like, look at the material things we have and things like that. And it's not just taking that and hoarding it and piling it up and like that. It's, let's work with a little bit more with ourselves, because we don't want to compare ourselves to somebody else's successes, whether it's our parents, our colleagues, our siblings, in some cases even our children, our ancestors. This is about self identification. So don't compare to others. One of the things I had taught my stepson and my son in our house, they were into sports, and I had always said to them, the universe created one of you. So God created one. So you don't have to be better than Tommy or Ricky or whoever. You need to be the best you. And by taking this time, you're able to actually increase that value for yourself. So I'm really happy with this eclipse season, even though in some ways it is pushing us, but it's pushing us over to the edge that we need. So it's not measuring ourselves uh, with capitalistic or materialistic or Western crap. It's our own value, and that is what is exciting. But this is all temporary, so we're not going to sit there for a whole year or 3 years or anything like that doing all this deep self discovery. It's telling us to look up and beyond. It's this is a time period with our crown chakra. For those of you who don't know, that's the top of your head. I always see it as a form of, that's where a lot of the information comes into, amongst other things. It's a time to do like mystical meditations. You can even do sound baths and sessions. It's time to really do inner work, whether it's healings, astral travel. Um, it's it's uplifting and changing your spiritual higher frequency. It's just lifting yourself up a higher spiritual frequency. This is not all there is, though. There's much more, and it's the reason why I said about the money is sometimes people just focus on the money, like that's the value part or what they have, and I'm not accusing any of you out there of doing that. But the thing is, if you were to do that during this time period, it's a time that would be almost like an illusionment, that it would bring a fear. It would end up bringing in insecurity, anxiety, sleep loss, stress, worry, all of that not so good stuff. Um, but you name it, you could get it from just focusing on what we would consider the material world, in that sense. But there are things that we need to remember to value. And part of that is love. It's our heart. It's how we give it and who we give it to. It's compassion. It's beauty. And I'm not just talking about physical human beauty, it's beauty of the mountains, beauty of the ocean, the beauty that a person shares in your life with their personality or their humor, a beautiful movie, a book, a baby's laughter, flowers, you name it, a beautiful meal you share with your family. And that's what this part is. See, this is one piece to the bigger puzzle of the changes that are coming this year. And this is the piece of, like, excavating and creating and discovery, like I said before. A lot of the growth is happening now in the area of relationships and partnerships, and a balance is taking place. And it's allowing us to give and to receive in a healthy way. Some of us, excuse me, give in unhealthy ways or we take in unhealthy ways. And this time period is giving us that balance. So, and I'm a Libra, so I like that balance stuff. But like I said, it's the inner work, it's building up our resources, it's making ourselves more valuable in other ways. But it's us seeing it. It's nice to hear other people say it, and a lot of times we look for that. How many times have we looked for somebody else to say, hey, good job, you achieved this, that pat on the back, or that acceptance? That's not what this time is about. The time is of accepting yourself, and it's also how can you increase that value? So, how can you do that? It's by learning new things. How do we do that? Learn a new skill, change up your mindset, you know, do something a little bit different, create something. In those ways, by developing new skills, by learning new things, um, it could be a whole nother income for you. It could be a whole nother happy. It could be turning a hobby into a business. Excuse me. It's an expansion. It's an expansion on who you are. And this is a time to learn something new by making yourself available to receive and to appreciate and to be compensated as well. Now, some of you might think that's funny because it's like, oh, I don't mind taking compensation. But the thing is, sometimes we misvalue, excuse me again, sometimes we misvalue ourselves and we put in, like that's it, we put in 150%. We put in all that. This is readjusting a lot of that. And it's not about scams. It's not about get rich quick schemes. It's about evolving yourself and going up the ladder. I am going to be greater than I ever thought with my own effort. But it's not because somebody else is just pushing you in that sense, or and this is not something hollow. So the reason why you're going to evolve as that person is because you you realize that higher purpose. You realize, like, why am I learning all of this stuff? Because part of our the bigger part of our purpose of being here is to serve. It's to teach, it's to give. And as we do that, we allow the other people to do that same. Like I said, balance. Um, we're not here to hoard and to be greedy. Those people, if that's part of their destiny, and you choose to be around it, then that's what you're plugging into, that type of frequency. If that's not what you want to be around, unplug from that. Allow those people to live their own. We don't have to damn them. We don't have to tell them about themselves. Self identification time. So, no, nobody's going to be the winner. Nobody's going to be the loser because you cannot compare yourself. I can't reiterate that one enough. We are all one. And this is a time of learning that community. It's a time of unity. We're all going to end up going to the same place. Nobody's getting to a better place than someone else. No one's going to get a higher reward. It's really learning about that community in that sense. It's not about ego, honey. It's really not about ego. It's not about competition. If that's the energy that you're in, then guess what? That's where you're going to go. And I actually didn't tune in to find out what would happen if you chose not to. I guess you might get the opposite. So, this eclipse, as I said before, is for the next 6 months. It's a realization of natural boundaries. It's setting that tone so that within those next 6 months, you'll see by the time fall gets here, and the end of the year wraps up, um, it's just it's like being that squirrel in a squirrel community. Everybody's gathering their nuts or whatever they eat, and then it comes time to that feast where we could sit back and enjoy as a community that time of celebration. Um, it'll be right now. It's conserving our time. It's conserving our resources. This is how we're going to build up, those nuts like the squirrels will. It's conserving your time. Know where you're putting it. Make sure that it is of a value. That's one way. It's understanding that you need that time to breathe, that time to exhale. It's understanding you need that time of rest. It's time to take care of yourself. It's time to take care of your home. It's time to take care of your body. It's time to be loved. It's time to love your family. Your body and your health is your greatest wealth. And that's what we're going to be working on the next few months. So gather your nuts, gather those things that you need, whether it is energy, whether it's however, and put things in order in a nice fashion. We don't need to complain. We don't need to bitch about it. When we redirect ourselves in other ways, all it does is causes limits. That's all the bitching and moaning does. It sets up limits for us and not allowing us to soar. And we can't control everything that's on the planet. We can't control everything that's in our country or in other countries. And these limits that we're going to set for ourselves, so whoever we choose to communicate with, however we choose to spend our time, our health, what we ingest, toxins, other things, this is teaching us to focus. And that's part of that appreciation. And it's just one step. It's almost like when you go from being a little kid and you first learn how to walk, or in some cases we first learn how to crawl or roll, and then we learn how to walk, and then we learn how to run, and we don't do it with our parents, and then we learn how to roller skate or we learn how to ride a bike. This is like another phase like that. So eventually we learn how to drive a car and maybe a tractor trailer, maybe a boat. This is like another phase. One of my famous astrologers, Kapacha, compared it to a duck pond. It's like you start off in a little duck pond, and as you grow and learn, you end up in a stream. And from the stream, you end up in a bigger stream or a river. And from there, and it goes on and on. And then eventually it goes into, uh, the ocean. And from the ocean, maybe it's the galactic ocean. But there's always a growing phase, because if we weren't growing, then what are we really learning, and what is that objective of being here? It's finding some way. And it doesn't, if you're not physically capable of doing a lot of it, a lot of this is mental too. But deep down inside, it all stems from looking for the beauty and being comfortable in our bodies, um, embracing those surroundings, and even when you're blue, try to do it. You know, it's how do you truly measure your success? How do you measure it? I like to measure it by, am I happy? Am I feeling good? How calm am I? Is there serenity in my life? The tranquility. What am I accepting in my life? That's how I try to measure it. I don't try to measure it by, I have 3 yachts, 2 Lamborghinis, and 4 mansions. And believe me, I don't have those. And if you do, there's nothing wrong with that. But still, take time to go back and to value yourself differently with that. Don't just, it's, I just don't want you to measure yourself in that materialistic way or capitalistic way that we've been known, because it's just delusional for us. It's like it's somebody else's pretenses, somebody else's stuff. You know, you are a beautiful being. You are a successful being. And the only competition you have is yourself. Now, as we dig down into what we need to in these upcoming months, but especially during this eclipse season, yep, Mercury's still in retrograde. I'm tongue tied, but I think I'm tongue tied even without it sometimes. But just know that you're that shining star. You're that shooting star in the sky that can have anything you want. And the only limit you have is the limit that you put on yourself. Now, you could catch more videos from me on YouTube as well as my podcast. I'm on Instagram as well as Facebook in a couple places. Please make sure to like, follow, ring the bell, because a couple of them have ring the bell. You could follow my podcast is on Spotify, and it's Spiritual Journeys with Tina Vesely. I have an email at tinavesely at AOL.com, and for any questions or information, please send it to that. Also, and at the end, you'll probably see, well, you will see the way to connect. But visit my website, www.tinavesely.com. I look forward to watching you all grow as well as I grow in my journey. Have a blessed day.